On today's Alabama Football Report, we're taking a look at 5 players to watch during spring practice for the Crimson Tide. Before we get to our 5, who is your top player to watch as a critical off-season/preseason begins for the Crimson Tide and new head coach Kalen DeBoer? Sound off for me at the pinned comment of today's video. There's a lot of players you can mention in the comments, and you're all going to be correct because it's a brand new regime taking over. I want to begin with a truly new player. That's Germie Bernard, the Washington Husky wide receiver, who has been a journeyman so far in his college career, which is unusual to say, but it is the truth here. Bernard was at Michigan State in 2022, only caught 7 passes, good average, 18.3 yards per catch. Was receiver 4 on a stacked Husky squad in 2023. He probably would have been their number 1 receiver had he returned. He was stuck behind lock top 10 pick, if not top 5 pick, or maybe quarterbacks early. Top 10 pick, Rome Odunze. Jalen Polk is probably going to go top 50. Jalen McMillan could go top 75. It was not a lack of talent that led to Bernard not having a massive role, although he still had almost 500 yards compared to some of your returning receivers. That's actually pretty darn high up on the list. It was that he was stuck behind 3 NFL caliber players. He has a real chance to be wide receiver 1 in a room overall at the wideout spot that is wide open. It could be Ryan Williams that emerges by the end of the season. The Jermaine Burton role is gone. You have lost other players to transfer, etc. You might lose a few more, by the way. But I think Bernard can play a big role for this offense and be a key part of what I assume to be a Jalen Milroe-led passing attack that will rely, much like Washington did with Michael Penix, on plenty of deep balls. Speaking of Penix, here's what he said on Bernard. Just know that it's hard to guard Germ, man. He's going to make big-time plays. He's going to make big-time plays at Alabama, and he's a guy that works extremely hard. He's a guy that's calling at all types of times of the day, hey, can he come throw to me? I want to run these routes. He wants to put in that extra work. He wants to get better in everything that he does. And it's going to show in game time and big time situations. He's a guy that I trust, just like the rest of the guys. He's right up there. So who will lead Alabama in receiving yards in 2024? Go ahead and get that way too early prediction in right now. Let's go to the defense here. Quandarrius Robinson. And this is going to be a interesting position group battle because you're replacing your top 2 players, Dallas Turner, who could be the first defensive player taken, and Chris Braswell, who will probably be a top 60, 75 pick at worst in the upcoming NFL draft. And the other guys are a bit more unproven. Robinson stands out as one of them. 14 games played last year, 2 TFLs, a sack and a half. The vast majority of his snaps came on special teams because they weren't rotating as much as maybe some other teams have done. I will make note, in this new defense for Alabama, they'll have one of the more true edge rushers on the field and more personnel packages than you saw previously. Well, it wouldn't be a Turner and Braswell. It would be one of those guys spends most of their time out there, especially with the unprovenness at pass rusher and the way they use some heavier defensive linemen in that 4-2-5 base. Here's what Charlie Potter of On3 wrote about Robinson. What is clear is there are opportunities to be had. And not just for players who wear their turns like Robinson and Cope, although those two seem to be the leaders in the clubhouse before UA's first official practice of the DeBoer era. This has been the definition of waiting your turn. You saw it with Dallas Turner to a certain extent as well. Braswell somewhat in that conversation too. Patience has always been king at Alabama. You might not play year 1. You might not play year 2. If you don't transfer, if you don't chase the NIL money under Nick Saban, if you got a chance to start, you were going to be an NFL caliber player and you'd probably be a somewhat early round draft pick. I think that still remains true even with the new coaching staff in place at Alabama. So I am anticipating and hoping and expecting a breakout season from Robinson in 2024. The March sub-battle is underway. We did win the February one. Suck it, Michigan. Let's make sure we win the March one as well. A narrow deficit at this time, although Michigan had some better results on the combine press conference stuff. I get it. They had the quarterback. People care about the quarterback going pro. Help us get there by subscribing for more free Alabama football YouTube videos. Let's close that 22 sub gap. I would maybe argue that one of the most important players to watch is Elijah Pritchett, because no longer is he going to be the, in theory, opposite starter of Caden Proctor and banking on him being a good offensive tackle to be your best one. Now he has to be, unless you're going to do something with Tyler Booker. You need Pritchett, who hopped in the portal briefly and then decided not to go in the portal, to emerge as a really good starter. The next, not even the next great Bama offensive lineman, who's going to be a first-round pick, Jonah Williams, J.C. Latham, Evan Neal, etc., but just a good one. Just a guy that can start in the SEC. Pritchett was the number 5 offensive tackle in the 2022 class. He was beaten out by Caden Proctor in 2023 as the starter. And especially early on, neither played that well. Proctor eventually got it kind of figured out a little bit, but Pritchett never got the chance to because he lost the job and was benched. He also almost transferred. He hit the portal and then hopped back in a day later. Maybe he realized there was a decent chance Proctor was going to leave. In total for Elijah Pritchett, he didn't play that much, less than 100 snaps. 3 sacks allowed, 1 hurry. The run blocking grade was pretty solid. The problem was the Arkansas game in particular. 25 snaps, 3 sacks allowed. It is not a typo you see there on the pass blocking grade. It was a 1.1. I can't recall seeing a lower. I'm sure there's one out there. Maybe the Chaz Green Cowboys Falcons was giving me the same vibes where Adrian Claiborne beat Chaz Green and the Cowboys O-line like 5 times for sacks. And he said later, I was doing the exact same move and they never figured out how to stop it. And then Claiborne had like 8 sacks all year long that year. You kind of saw something similar, by the way, in that game out of Elijah Pritchett, where he struggled, he never adjusted, it was kind of a mess all the way through, and it even led to some, I would argue, some fairly ridiculous takes on stuff on that side. Landon Jackson had 3.5 sacks in that game. I think they mostly came against Elijah Pritchett, and he got hyped suddenly as a round 1 draft pick. And he had 6.5 sacks last year and ended up coming back because he was never going to be a round 1 pick. He just smoked Elijah Pritchett. Now Alabama needs him to be better. I would have felt better if Scott Huff was still here as the offensive line coach. He led the Joe Moore award-winning unit. But you got to have better results here. And not only that, if Pritchett's not a starter, which would be surprising and concerning if he was not, he probably will hop in the transfer portal because means he's probably never going to win the job at Alabama, and at that point, transferring actually does make quite a bit of sense. The Alabama football jersey deal is still going up to 30% off when you go to chatsports.com/Alabama jersey. We'll put that link in the comment section and the description of today's video. You can get some alumni players, Bryce Young, and more custom jerseys, some good variety there. So go get yours today at chatsports.com/Alabama jersey. That link will be in the comment section and the description of today's show. Back to defense here. To a certain extent, the secondary works as the 5th player to watch. We'll pick just one here and go with DeVonta Smith, the defensive back / I think is going to be a safety for Alabama this year. And I am excited, if not a little bit scared for this position group overall. Nick Saban had a ton of praise for DeVonta Smith, the secondary player, not the former and now current Eagles wide receiver. He was getting some reps with the ones last year even, before he unfortunately went down, and he missed the majority of the season with injuries, and the hope is he stays healthy this year and has the breakout season that Alabama needs several defensive backs to have this year. Here's what Saban said on Smith. DeVonta's a really good athlete. He's a hard worker. He's gotten bigger and stronger. He has really good speed, been a very good special teams player for us in the past. I think his knowledge and experience is starting to come to fruition in the secondary. He's very conscientious and not making the mental errors that have been a little bit of an Achilles heel in the past. So we're very pleased with the progress that he is making. Now, Smith only played a handful of snaps, but he's done a bit of everything. Both box, kind of that strong safety, almost, sort of linebacker role. Free safety, 15 snaps. And slot corner, 18 snaps. Maybe what your path is, he's a safety for year 1, and then gets a chance to take over the Malachi Moore role. It's kind of that nickel safety overhang player. The versatility matters because I would bet that Smith ends up being one of your top 5 secondary pieces this year. And being able to play, let's say, 3 of those spots gives you some much-needed flexibility elsewhere. So what is your confidence level in Alabama's defensive back room entering early on in spring practice for 2024? Scale it for me from 1 to 10 in the comments. Finally, Justice Haynes, and this one's almost too much fun. This is maybe one of your most exciting returning players if we ignore the whole Heisman Trophy Jalen Milroe conversation, which is very valid there. I thought he should have played more. Now, maybe he was a bit nicked up. Maybe they didn't trust the freshman. We know pass protection was an issue. That's always a concern for young backs. Most of them tend to struggle with it. A 23.5 pass block grade last year is pretty terrible. Should be a big focal point. But with the losses this team has undergone at the running back position, Haynes could at least be your early down back. And he flashed last year on only 25 carries, 168 yards, a 6.7 average, and 2 touchdowns. I think he is going to be the lead back for Alabama in 2024. I think he will go over 1,000 yards. But it is worth mentioning for all of these players, it is a new regime. For almost all of them, to an extent, there's a clean slate being brought in here. So you have to reprove yourself to a new coaching staff. I think Haynes will do that just fine. So what do you think? Will Haynes go for that 1,000-yard season we mentioned? Go vote in the comments. Y for yes, N for no.